This is the Disruptive Native Takeover with me, Lance Witten. Of course, the man behind Disruptive Native, Gesant Abada, is right next to me. We are talking about his new book, Hack with a Grenade. The author is sitting right next to me. Gesant, what is up with that title?
Well, the title, not a reference to my nose. It is something that's very dear to me in the journalism sense. And I guess over a period of about 15 years, when I first assumed a position on the news desk, a position of responsibility, and I was told by the editor of the time, right, you the guy with the grenade, don't stuff it up, you know? If you pull the plug, all kinds of damage is going to happen. So it's about being responsible in a media space where we have the power in the media, and it's about keeping that pin firmly intact.
Is it like that though? I mean, in a real sense, you've been a newspaper editor for a number of titles across the country, some of the most respected and oldest newspaper titles in the country. Is it really like that? Do you get the sense of danger, I want to say, when you're putting together a paper?
I don't think it's the newspapers per se that are the kind of charge that you have to light. But I think if you look at society these days, if you look at things like Black Lives Matter and race issues and race baiting and clickbait, there is a fair bit of responsibility on the shoulders of editors to keep things tidy and to bring down the temperature and to be the voice of reason. So whatever we do, we need to do so responsibly. So when you write that story, you need to be up at night sweating over it. You don't want that phone call in the middle of the night from your news editor if you're the editor saying, boss, we stuffed up. We're going to have to do damage control in the morning. So in that sense, the burden of responsibility has always stayed with me over my career. And that spans 21 years, but more so over the last 15 years as an editor, you know?
I want to talk about that responsibility a little bit more, but a little bit later. First, I want to talk about this cover.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. There's some parts of it that reminds me of your old office at the Cape Argus. We've got a Cape Argus front page over here. We've got another fantastic bit of storytelling that we did on Ashley Creel as well. Nadine's documentary was phenomenal. But tell me a little bit about this cover. It seems to have a bit of input from everywhere in your history.
So the style was borrowed from, the inspiration was drawn from Mad magazine. And it's a magazine that we loved growing up, my brother and I. And I mentioned my brother because we also had a childhood pact that if I were to ever write a book, my brother, who was a graphic designer, would be the cover designer. And the illustration was created by his son, Diana Bader, and cover design by Malika Bader. So my dad has been proved wrong because he used to tell us, my one son wants to draw poppenches, you know, little figures, and my other son tells stories, what's going on in the world, you know, and our multimedia has come full circle now. You know, he's busy filming this episode now as we speak. But he's also been able to design the cover for me, and something that I wanted. So it's packed with Easter eggs of things that's very personal to me. Chicken Licken's there. Yeah. You know I've wanted to be a brand ambassador for a long time.
Chicken Licken, if you're listening. It's right there.
All the titles I worked on and edited, the Cape Argus, I worked at ETV. Jesus lives in my toilet.
Tell me about this. I'm very interested in this because I'm sure you ruffled some feathers with this.
And I think it's going to ruffle a few feathers if people walk past bookshops and they see that little Easter egg in there, Jesus lives in my toilet. That's based on a real headline that was in the Daily Voice. And the first chapter is about religion. Using that story as the vehicle to talk about the media's relationship with religion and how we need to use it as a catalyst to bring people together, you know? Interfaith is something that's very close to my heart, and I believe that the media plays a role in bringing people of different belief systems together towards a common good. So don't be fooled by that headline there. It's a very real headline that happened in the Daily Voice, but it's not about that. It's used as a little device to get into the topic of religion.
You are going to explain that Jesus lives in my toilet.
In the book.
Okay, we'll leave it for the book.
I don't want to give it away because the book's full of miracles. I'll just leave it at that, you know?
Fantastic. I want to come back to this issue of responsibility and we as the media that we have, you know, this weight of responsibility. And you mentioned interfaith and bringing that, that kind of story to the fore. We've worked on some pretty incredible stories in the past, particularly in bringing issues to the fore that may not have gotten the attention that it deserved.
Yeah.
Can you touch on some of those?
Okay, so again, I don't want to give too much away in the book, but one of the things I remember doing is coming back from a dining hall where homeless people are fed a meal and there are job opportunities. And I remember coming back from this dining hall with a big idea. And when I came back, I was a little bit disappointed that my team virtually like rolled their eyes, like, what are we going to say about homeless people? You know, how is that news? And then there was a certain Lance Witten who took this to heart and decided to spend time on the streets. So the book covers, a significant part of the book covers that storytelling behind a project involving homeless people, a collaboration between a newspaper and homeless people, and opening the eyes of Capetonians to these invisible people we ignore on a daily basis. We don't look at them, we don't speak to them, we don't engage them. What is their story, and how do we change our own common humanity in the telling of that story about homeless people?
I want to come back again to this grenade scenario, because now you've talked about the role of a newspaper. Does it feel like that? Do you feel that weight when you're putting together a newspaper? I don't think people understand what goes into. You pick up the newspaper in the morning and you read through it, but you don't know what's the psyche of what goes into putting something on the front page. What decisions get made to what gets put on the third page, what gets put on the inside page. Do you touch on some of that, and how important is it?
I do, particularly in the preface and the introduction of the book, because I think we're in a very tough environment as the media. We've just had COVID-19 as a major disruptor, probably the biggest in the 21st century, and the media and newspapers are constantly under pressure. How do we do things? We need to compete with the stories going viral, but we need to keep our credibility intact at the same time. So how do you reconcile those two things? You know, you need to get the eyeballs, but at the same time you need to be responsible. So when I first started at the Argus, I played it straight up and down. I did it by the book. I was one of the lucky few people who was able to edit the newspaper twice. So the second time I thought, okay, newspapers are in trouble. We need to do something completely different. Throw the formula book out of the window, stick to the rules though, but at the same time, how can we make it innovative? How can we incorporate video, audio, graphics, all kinds of storytelling into newspapering? And that's where a lot of the fun was had, you know. So yes, I made peace with the idea that we need to break stories elsewhere. But at the end of the day, people need to come back to the newspaper for the depth, the analysis, to be entertained, and to reimagine this fine newspaper that's more than 160 years old, the Cape Argus, because the bulk of the book is based on my time at the Cape Argus, as a paper that was at home in the merchant's home when Cape Town was a port city, not that kind of merchant, a shipping merchant. When Cape Town was a shipping port, you know, but also welcome in the merchant's office, but as well as the family home, you know, bringing values together, talking about what makes us tick as a city, but also as a country, the older the paper got, you know. But I think the genesis of this book started as a manuscript about tabloid journalism, because 15 years ago, 2005, I found myself as part of the founding team of the Daily Voice. And it was the best fun I ever had as a journalist. You know, we were wild, we did all kinds of things, and we made a lot of people angry at the time. But it was a real education for me as a journalist, you know. And I started writing a manuscript called Tabloid Junkie, which was a working title for this book, but it didn't quite fit in. And there's a funny story, because the first draft of that manuscript was located on a MacBook that bombed. So I found these amazing guys at Simplified IT Services who were able to retrieve that old manuscript from the book, which is incredible, you know. And it became the draft manuscript for this book, you know. Without
getting into too much that's in the book itself, your scariest moment as a newspaper editor, you've put the paper to bed. You're sitting up in your bed at night going, tomorrow, that's it for me. I'm done. Yeah. My career is over.
Yeah. Look, it's not in this book, but it was quite a scary moment. it involved, the consequences were massive. It shut down in a whole newspaper, the story that I did, because of corruption claims against police officers and gang members. There was a time when I couldn't go to Kensington for almost 4 years because of the story I wrote. But I exposed a gang leader who had been in cahoots with senior police officers, and it was all caught on camera. They were at a karaoke party, and the story in the Daily Voice was headlined "Bandit Camera." And this thing just got out of control, where the guy who had leaked the videotape to me disclosed that in court, that he leaked it to me. So then that made me a witness.
Yeah.
And it was very, very difficult and scary times for me, So it gets heated out there.
So I think something that's very important that we have to mention, Hack with a Grenade is available on pre-order. How do people go about getting it?
So available on pre-order at loot.co.za, very easy to find. And the book itself is going to be available in the second week of December. However, there will be a 4-city launch: Cape Town, Durban, Pretoria, Johannesburg.
Cannot wait for that.
Lance is the host of the Cape Town launch. And so there will be books available in early December, but all good bookstores, and pre-order at loot.co.za.
Fantastic. Gesanta Bada, author of Hack with a Grenade. How does that sound? That sounds lekker.
That sounds good, eh? I must tell you, I can't lie.
Available on pre-order. This has been Disruptive Native, a takeover by me, Lance Witten. Of course, you can visit loudhousemedia.co.za for more excellent content and more tips about the media. Thank you.